Let me try zigzagging. Whoa, maybe not that much. Oh. Oh. It's true. I had my first big accident with Smurf, and I'd like to tell you about it, and I'd like to tell you about some, some other not so fun updates that I have. I am pedaling. Don't worry about me, because I am pedaling. I am not illegal. Not at all. Yes, I am, first of all, I'm fine. I'm okay. It was scary, for sure, when my head hit the ground like that. I did not lose consciousness. I did have a headache immediately, after, and what I assumed to be a mild concussion. And I also did sprain my ankle, pretty significantly. I was limping for a few days. I'm fine now, like I said. It's been a couple weeks. That's part of why you haven't heard from me, is I've been figuring that whole situation out. And I am wearing a new helmet. This is obviously my second full face helmet in like 2.5 months. So I would like for that that trend to not continue. I would prefer, to spend $300 on a helmet maybe once a year, or even better, just have it last for a long time. I do like this helmet better. It's a Scorpion GT930 transformer, so it's a really affordable, modular, full-face helmet, and I'm enjoying it. It's actually an upgrade in a lot of ways over the Sedici helmet that I had before. But I am also, indebted to that Sedici because it kept me safe in a pretty intense collision with the ground. I also had some neck soreness for a few days because I kind of had some whiplash. But all things considered, I got really lucky. Obviously, if I was not wearing a helmet with that level of force into the ground, well, it would just be a really different story. So that's that. That's what happened. How did it happen is what I'd like to get into next. If you go back and watch it, look at the numbers on the upper right corner, this part of my screen. They're glowing red. And unfortunately, that's a big part of what I need to talk to you about today. I mentioned overheating in my initial review with Smurf, with the Wired Freedom, that so many of you have watched, and thank you so much for that support. I really do appreciate that. And when I mentioned it in the review, it was more of a footnote. It was kind of a occasionally I see the numbers glow red, but it wasn't causing me any friction at that time. Well, fast forward to today, and it's just a really different story, sadly. The bike overheats every time I get on it. It does cut out semi-regularly. Usually when it cuts out, it's on a steep hill. Like there's a hill in Brentwood that I frequent, that sometimes I'll go there with my scooter and whatever. Well, with this bike, it overheats to upwards of 300 degrees Fahrenheit and shuts off every single time without fail that I climb that hill. Granted, it is a very steep hill. I did the Google Earth calculation on it, and it's something like 9-degree slope, which I think translates to like a 15% grade. So it's a 15% grade, but at the same time, if you wouldn't expect a 3,200 watt monster to struggle on a 15% incline, and you certainly wouldn't expect it to overheat every single time. The other case where I see overheating is unfortunately just riding in traffic. oftentimes in traffic, I've got, you know, pedal assist to 7, which is my top pedal assist, but it's like 2,000 watts. It's not like anything crazy. And I'm usually pedaling, and then if I hit like an incline, I'll use the throttle to get me up that incline. And the throttle is set to 100%, so full power. And often, when I'm in traffic and I'm trying to keep up with traffic, but I rarely go 40, so I'm going like 30, maybe 35 for minutes on end. It also starts overheating. Luckily, I have not had it cut out in that situation, but if it did, it would be, you know, pretty severe because, well, case in point, this, I'm about to turn right on McEwen Drive in Franklin. Franklin, Tennessee is where we are. And right now it's under construction, but it's the, like, I don't want to say it's the only way to get to the park I'm going to, but it's like the best way. It's the most direct way, it's the most scenic way, etc. So it's the way I usually try to go. But it's, you know, it's a big incline. It's not steep, but it's long. It's like an endurance thing. And I did have one night, I did have my motor at like 260 Fahrenheit, which is hot. By the way, in my review, I had it in Celsius. I was told by Wired to try changing it to Fahrenheit, so that's why I'm speaking in Fahrenheit terms anyway. The bike was around 260 Fahrenheit when I started, you know, climbing this hill that we're about to climb, but from the other direction. And it just started climbing. And the thing with this motor, and I'll get into this in a bit, is that when it gets hot, it just shoots up. There's not really, it's not a heat soak thing. It's not like a slow over time thing. It's a, hey, I am hot. You can clip me saying that. I am hot, and therefore I'm going to go from, shit, dude. I'm gonna go from, I'm just letting these fucking cars pass. They don't want anything to do with me. Oh my god. Homeboy's trying to kill me. Shifting into my lane like that. Anyway, as soon as it is hot, it's like, all right, I'm just gonna spike from 250 degrees Fahrenheit to 300 degrees Fahrenheit, which is the cutoff point on the motor, in 30 seconds or less. And that's what I'm gonna do. And you better hope that you're somewhere where you can pull over, because otherwise, good luck. I'm on this hill and I've got traffic behind me. Granted, as you can see, the speed limit's 25 here, so I do also like the fact that the speed limit's pretty low on this road. It makes me feel, you know, less pressure, less performance anxiety, I guess you could say. But I was doing 25 and I was struggling because the temperature was like, okay, 265, 270, 275, 280, 285. Finally at like 290, I'm getting close to the top of the hill at that point. But again, I've got like this row of cars behind me because the bike is throttled so much that I'm only managing like 18 miles an hour. And I'm twisting the throttle all the way, and of course, you know, and rightfully so, of course the bike is not giving me anywhere near 3,200 watts. But the problem is, you know, when you got cars lined up behind you and it's a 2-lane road like this, it's not ideal. So that was very scary. Luckily nothing happened. I crested the hill right as we were hitting 290. Again, another 10 degrees. I would have lost my motor, you know, would have cut out. I would have had to, I don't know, pull over somewhere. But as you can see, there's nowhere to really pull over. I learned my lesson, and the reason I'm doing it now is because I just started riding the bike, so we're not in overheating territory yet. But in, you know, in a few hours we will be, or in an hour or whatever. Usually the overheating shows up around like mile 15 or so, and I usually like to do like 30 miles, so it's around half, you know, half of the ride. The second half of the ride, usually it's overheating left and right, sadly. Now, the third thing is, on the footage that you saw at the beginning of me crashing, I was actually doing a hill test to reproduce the issue for Wired because I have made a warranty claim on the overheating issue, of course. And I was trying to demonstrate, ironically, I was trying to demonstrate how the bike overheats and loses power on hills and how it's a safety issue. And then, of course, I was trying to serpentine. So in the video, you'll see that I'm kind of perpendicular to the slope. And the reason for that is that one technique I saw to try online is serpentining, which means you're essentially kind of winding up the hill, slow speeds, and you're trying to minimize that slope that you're on. Didn't work, obviously. I learned my lesson there. So the bike ends up, pulling a lot of power. I don't think it cut out, but I can't see the numbers on the footage. Let me know if you guys have some way of like the FBI does in TV shows where they like zoom in and then they like enhance. Let me know if you guys can like try that on the temperature gauge and see what the numbers were, because I just don't know and I don't remember, but I know they were glowing red. That's obvious in the video, and so that is over 265, I think, is when it starts turning red. Bike pulls power. It starts to lean down the hill, and I lean with it, obviously, and then I'm trying to get my right foot down so that I can stop the thing from tipping. And the problem is, because it's like downhill, I can't reach, and so the bike ends up tipping so far before I touch that I can't rescue it, and that's where I go over and I try to recover with my left foot, and then I twisted my left ankle, like I said, pretty good. That moment is like burned into my brain when I felt my ankle twist, because for those of you that don't know, I used to play racquetball in college, and I had 3 like devastating ankle injuries. Like grade 3 sprains where all 3 ligaments are torn, and I can't walk for like 6 weeks, and like as bad as an ankle sprain can be, I've had 3 of those, so it was like a little traumatic, to be honest, landing on that ankle that way. But then obviously like slamming my head into the pavement. I've never had a head injury, I've never had a concussion before. I'm pretty sure I had a mild concussion, but I didn't I didn't go to the doctor or anything because I didn't have any like severe symptoms of concussion, but yeah, it was a tough scene. With adrenaline, I was able to like easily get home. It was like 15 miles, but I was very, easily able to get home. And funnily enough, like when I got off my bike, I went to go take a shower, and I was like, my ankle actually felt okay. And then I got out of the shower and I like stepped on it a certain way, and then all of a sudden I couldn't put any weight on it. And the whole rest of the evening and like most of the next day was like that, where I just couldn't put any weight on it. So those are kind of the 3 scenarios I've had. Like I said, just to recap, it's like any hill over 12% that's like longer than 50 yards or so, it's gonna overheat. And then 30 miles an hour and up, and like cruising that way for longer than about 5 minutes, it's gonna overheat. The next thing I want to talk about is the warranty process so far and what I've learned. And this is like the main crux of the video, is that I have unfortunately come to know that Smurf, my beloved Smurf, his motor has a short in it. And even like saying that out loud makes me emotional, because I'm so bonded to this bike. Smurfs represented freedom for me. I know that's like cliche because that's the name of the bike, and I know that in my review I also said like this bike is so aptly named because it gives you freedom. But that's what it symbolized for me, right? If I'm having like a tough mental health day, many of you probably don't know, but I've suffered my entire life with anxiety disorders and OCD and like different mental health issues that I've run into. And like I'm a lot better now. And I wish I had this bike when I was like really in a bad way a couple of years ago, because it would have made all the difference. But I do now, and I ride this thing 5 times a week. I mean, it's rare that I miss a day, honestly. Like, certainly there are way more days over the past, you know, I've owned this bike. By the way, I've only had this bike since July 8th, and it's August 31st today, so that's like 7 weeks or 6 weeks. And so what is that? That's like 42 days, we'll say. I bet I've ridden it 35 times. You know, 35 days out of those 42, I've probably ridden it. It's been paramount to my mental health. It's been paramount to my physical health. I've lost 20 pounds since I got the bike. Maybe closer to 15, actually. Now that I think about that, it's been 7 weeks. Probably about 15 pounds. I love it. I love the product. I believe in the product. I believe in Wired as a brand. I also think that the problem I've run into here is unique to me. Like I haven't heard of a lot of instances or a lot of cases of Wired Freedom's overheating chronically. But with my luck, Smurf came to me with a defective motor, and I'm about to get into the mechanics of what I think is going on. But yeah, it's sad, man. It's just sad. I'm frustrated. You know, worst case scenario, Wired just ships me a motor and then tells me to figure it out. Okay, so the next thing I'll get into is how we diagnosed this. So, it's so beautiful out here, man. So freaking pretty. First, the Wired rep asked me, how fast does it go from not overheating to overheating? And that was part of why I was on that hill that night, was I was trying to get footage. And I did successfully get some footage, and I'll show you that right here. Here it goes, right here. I'm gonna turn left to make sure nobody's gonna hit me. And then here we go. This is the hill right here. I'm gonna full throttle it. I'm gonna pedal as hard as I can. Drop down in gear. You guys can see 267, 270, 275, 276, 280, 284, 289, 291, we're about to stall. Made it to the top, 300, and cut out. That's exactly what happened last time. So as you can see, as I said earlier, we're talking 30 seconds between, you know, the difference between, okay, 250, I'm hot, but I'm not overheating, to the engine is turning off. And then, so I replied back to him and I sent him that footage. Oh, this is so beautiful, man. I hope y'all can see this. I mean, I know you can. That's how cameras work, but... And so then he comes back and he asked me, can you try disconnecting your motor? You know, when next time it overheats, disconnect your motor cable and then reconnect it and then turn the bike back on and let me know if the temperature is any better after doing that, or like if it's significantly better, right? I think he was trying to gauge if the temperature sensor was working or not. And I was able to do that. And of course, lo and behold, I got to the top of that, you know, hill, which I think from this point forward, we're going to call the Hill of Doom. That's what we'll say, the Hill of Doom. So I get to top of the Hill of Doom, Smurf cuts out and motor cuts out. Smurf hits 306 at the top of the hill and turns himself off. So I'm so sorry, Smurf, for saying that. Calling you an it. And I quickly get off the bike and I undo the 2 screws on either side of the connection, and then I pull the connection off and I plug it back in. Obviously, I turn the bike back on and it shows 255. And granted, like a minute had passed, and I knew from experience at that point that that was, you know, that matched what the bike would have shown had I not done all of that. Because the interesting thing about this overheating issue is that not only does it heat up in the blink of an eye to 300 degrees, but then it also cools down in the blink of an eye. And so then he asked me, okay, can you take a picture of the pins on the motor connection. So I did that, and he comes back and he circled 2 of the pins and he says, okay, you need to go buy a multimeter if you don't have one, because we need to test the continuity between these 2 pins. I go get a multimeter, I test the pins, and guess what? There's continuity, which sounds like a good thing, right? But unfortunately it's not. The filming of a TV show, continuity is not good in this context. What it means essentially is that the circuit, these 2 pins actually have electrical connection to each other when they shouldn't. So, and the reason I know they shouldn't is because the wired rep told me specifically if there's continuity, it means your motor has shorted out. I really like this bike, guys. I think you can tell. Just, what it's done for me and what it's done for my life has been more than like any other product I've bought, I think, has ever done for my life. Wanted to do my version of like a technical explanation and a mechanical explanation for what my theory is on what's going on with Smurf. Here's what I know to be true about how geared hub motors work. You have batteries, obviously, and then you have a controller that pulls current from those batteries and then sends them to the motor in a very strategic and specific pattern. In a geared hub motor, essentially, and this is like, when I looked into it, this blew my mind because I had no idea. The whole thing is essentially powered by magnets. The way it works is you have copper coils, and let's say, like, for example, I don't know how many this motor has, I don't know any of that. But let's say, for example, a motor has 3 copper coils arranged in like a triangle pattern, right? A geared hub motor. But let's assume for a second that that temperature sensor is off to the side a little bit, and it's like really near coil 2 of 3. So if you have like coil 1, coil 2, coil 3, let's say the temperature sensor is down here in the bottom left of the triangle. And then let's assume that each copper coil has its own circuit, and then the controller's job is effectively to send current sequentially to each coil, because when you do that, when you send current to a coil, it creates an EMF, an electromagnetic field. And then you have, I think they call it like sun gears and planetary gears, okay? So obviously the planet rotates around the sun. So these are the sun gears I'm talking about, right? When you send current to these coils in a certain specific pattern, you are magnetizing each of those 3 coils sequentially, and then on the outside of them, you have another magnet that gets attracted to each next coil in the series, right? And you get this motion. So a short in electronics essentially means that circuit A and circuit B should not be connected electrically at all. And yet they are. And that's what we discovered with the continuity test, right? Is that, yeah, these 2 pins, wired guy says, hey, these should not have continuity. If they do, you have a short. And then you test low resistance between those 2 electrical circuits. And in my case, it was actually severely low resistance. It was less than 1 ohm, which when I was looking into it, it looks like, like a severe short is less than 1 ohm. A moderate short is like 1 to 10 ohms. And then a mild short is 10 to 100 ohms. Let's assume that the controller has decided in this fraction of a millisecond right now, that it wants to send all of its current into coil 1, which is at the top. But coil 1 and coil 2 are accidentally connected. So now you have current spilling over from coil 1 into coil 2 when it's not expected and when it's not optimal in the cycle of, in the sequence well, you're gonna heat up a lot more than you want to in one specific spot. By the way, coil 3 is over here, like minding its own business. Like, I don't know what you guys are doing, but you guys should not be, you know, in bed together, right? It's kind of like coil 1 and coil 2 are having this affair. They shouldn't be mingling with anybody ever, right? I get some dirty looks out here when I'm going 8 miles an hour, being respectful. Anyway, so that explains why, like, okay, coil 3 is fine. You know, maybe coil 2 is really unhealthy and maybe coil 1 is like slightly unhealthy and coil 3 is fine. That explains why right now I'm able to pedal and get, you know, 350 watts and it feels fine and I didn't notice it. But then as soon as I am trying to, you know, push the bike, push the motor, that inefficiency is just going to show up in the form of heat where it shouldn't be. So that's my theory. That would also explain why when and this is a detail I failed to mention earlier, when I get to the top of the hill, let's say it's at 306 Fahrenheit, and then I put my bare finger on the motor, this is also why I think that I don't burn myself. And I'm able to just leave my finger on the motor. It's because the whole motor isn't 306 Fahrenheit. One tiny little specific area, but still a very important area that should not be 300 degrees, don't get me wrong. But it's isolated to one part of the motor, is my theory. I did that just to piss him off. Like I said, I'm in my villain era. So I think that's what's going on with Smurf, right? I think that's my theory at the moment. What caused it? It could have been anything, right? It could have been that when they, you know, the electrical wiring that they used when building my motor, you know, it could be that wire, like the insulation was rubbed off or something. And the two wires happen to touch and then like melt together, and now here we are or something. I'm just completely speculating. All I know is it wasn't my fault, and it's something that obviously when you pay as much as I paid for this bike, I shouldn't have to live with. So I think that brings us to the end of the video. Like I said, I still love this bike and I still wholeheartedly recommend it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for caring about this journey that I'm on, of just trying to find ways to get outside, get away from the desk. Thank you again for watching, and I'll keep you guys updated. Take care.